Thank you. So, I hope you had a short break. Was it good? You sure it was good? So my dad always told me then that after you've had a good meal, or it doesn't matter how small the meal is, what normally happens is the blood leaves your brain and goes to the tummy. I can see my prof nodding her head. She agrees with me. So let's see what we can quickly get the blood back into our brains. So can everybody be on your feet? Standing, please. Be upstanding. So since we've been speaking about money, I'd like us to simulate some kind of an activity. I can see she's already shaking. Let's go. Okay, so what we're going to do is very simple. I'm going to just ask you to follow the following steps. We're going to do clouds are forming. Go on. Clouds are forming. And by the way, just in case you're wondering what kind of cloud I'm referring to, is the clouds of money. Clouds are forming. Showers of money. Showers. Thunder! Oh, you missed it. We have to do it again. Are you ready? Clouds are forming. Clouds are forming. I'm not hearing you. Clouds are forming. Clouds are forming. Showers. Thunder! Thunder! You can sit down. Fantastic. I like it. Okay. So before the tea break, I asked everybody a question. How would you like to be described? Have you brewed it over? Who wants to go? So A, just to remind you, A is, I am a South African academic who is interested in international work or international landscape, whatever it is. Or B, I'm an international academic who just happens to be living in South Africa. So if you choose to be described as A, can I see by show of hands? It's fewer numbers. It's interesting. If you want to be described as B, can I see by show of hands? Seems to be a lot more people. If you want to be described as both, can I see by show of hands? So, so can you tell me why you chose yourself, sir? Why did you choose the way you want to be described? Yes. Oh, okay, I see. No, it doesn't matter. Even if you're a professional, it's fine. So anybody want to tell me why they choose A or B? Quickly. Anybody? You must have chosen it for a reason. Yes, you go.
I'll probably think that my expertise are not limited by my geography. Just because I'm here, I don't want to limit myself to where I operate from.
Okay, so that's why you chose B.
Yeah.
And you, sir?
Or similar reason.
The same thing.
I can work anywhere.
Anywhere,
Yeah,
that's good.
but I'm
So,
based here.
so I started by saying that they're both correct, okay? But the chances are the people who choose A maybe choose it from the perspective that, of course, they're South African, you're proud to be South African, you're interested in the international space. But then it sounds to me like while one is aspirational, one is inspirational. So what do I mean? So I'm South African, but interested. That's aspirational, okay? But the question is, right now, aren't you an international academic? I think you are. So if I said, okay, well, madam, if I gave you a brand new job in Ghana to do exactly what you're doing right now and do it amazingly in Ghana, wouldn't you resume next week and you're good to go? Potentially? Potentially, yeah? Yeah, definitely. Okay, good. So now, why am I making this point? I'm actually making it a discussion point. There is no right or wrong answer. But I'm teasing at the fact that most of the time, the reason why you're restricted to do specific international things is because you haven't fully concluded that right now you are international. That's actually very true. And I'll tell you how I know so. So the first time I set up LinkedIn, how many of us have a LinkedIn account? Show of hands. LinkedIn account. Most of us should. So I called myself Nigerian expert. That's my nomenclature. You know, you have a title on LinkedIn, Nigerian expert. I discovered that everybody who reached out to me or communicated with me were Nigerians. After all, I called myself what? a Nigerian expert. So I remember I woke up one morning and I thought, wait a minute. The issues in Nigeria are quite similar to the issues in Ghana, and maybe even similar to issues in Tanzania. And in some sense, depending on the area of expertise, similar to the issues in South Africa. So I remember I just woke up one morning and I changed my nomenclature to Africa expert. Within the space of 1 week, I was having conversations with folks from Botswana, Namibia. It surprised me, but all I did was change my nomenclature. Okay? Now, the trouble with changing the nomenclature is now you have to back it up. Okay? So what do you think I started doing? I started reading up about other countries that are not Nigeria. So in case you ask me about Ghana, I'm not going, wait a minute. But wait a minute. You say you're an Africa expert. So just that nomenclature change changed my outlook, and without even realizing it, it influenced my actions. You see what I mean? So that's the reason why, while they are both correct, if you realize and agree now, which you all are, that you are an international academic, you would act internationally. I'll give you another example. So I'm in a national interview in Nigeria a few years ago, and I was being interviewed about education in Nigeria. Now remember, it's a national television station in Nigeria. But each time the lady asked me a question about education, and I didn't realize I was doing this, I started first by painting an African picture with data about the issue before I narrowed it down to Nigeria. So I did this over and over again without even knowing it, to the point where I've had an interview, she was like, every question I asked you, you began with Africa. It's because I have so ingrained myself that I don't see myself as Nigerian in context as far as professionalization is concerned. So there's no buying, and what it does for me is it makes me behave differently. So I'll give an example of what I mean. So I'm carefully moving through the different dimensions of internationalization. So at this point, I'm speaking about partnerships. Okay, because how outlook influences everything else. So even the outlook influences how I look at partnerships and who I work with. So I'll give an example. Can you guess how I save numbers on my phone? And I started doing this without even realizing I was doing it. I saved, and I'll show you in a minute. I saved numbers on my phone, beginning with the country. So call any African country. I'll show you what I mean. And I'm not doing this to brag about it, because it's something really easy for anybody to do. Okay? So if you call any country, Prof. So, Morocco. So what you see, Prof, is Morocco starts, you see Morocco first. Yes. So you see Morocco first. Yeah, and then the name. So if you say Ghana, so you see Ghana first. Yes. Yeah. And there's a long list. Yeah. That is professors, vice chancellors, directors, and so on in Ghana. So over time, I discovered that I started building my leverage of partnerships across Africa and other countries that it now influenced my New Year resolutions. So 3 years ago, I was going through my phone and thought, wait a minute, I don't have enough contacts in Northern Africa. So my New Year resolution was to increase my partnership leverage in Northern Africa. Because of that decision, each time I go for a meeting, what do you think I was doing? I was looking for who registered in this meeting, who is from Northern Africa. So you see my point? So my outlook has influenced my action. And it happens all the time. Now, the good thing about partnerships is this. So you see, I'm tying it together because they're all linked. Now, with so many partners across different African countries, who, by the way, know what I do and they know what I want. They know I like to be a preferred partner on any opportunities or any grants. So what happens is, every other day, I get a WhatsApp message. Somebody will go, hey, Doc, this is somebody in Ghana. Hey, Doc, there's a new call in Ghana. Are you interested? Somebody say, in Tanzania, there's an international conference. Do you want to speak? Okay? Because of how I position myself. Okay? And it begins with a simple approach of just intentionality. So even structuring, I'm sure of this. There are at least 100 contacts on your phone you've never spoken to in the last 2 years. Am I right or wrong? There's at least 100. For some people, it's 500. Now, let me paint you a picture of what that means. These are 100 people who can potentially impact your career. But they don't know what you currently do because the last time you spoke with them was 3 years ago. Now, the trouble is because you haven't spoken to them for over 3 years, you don't even know how to start the conversation. So, action point 3. You have a list. Action point 3. Okay? Spend a few hours doing a reconnection or recalibration of the people you do know in other African countries. Begin from there. How many of us have friends or family members in other countries outside South Africa? Show of hands. I'm sure most of you do. Okay? Now, when you speak with them, you always speak with them from the perspective of family. How is grandma? Are you coming that's for the next family party? When next you have a chat with them, use a small 2-3 minutes. I'm talking about the levels of intentionality. And just say, do you even know I'm a professor in UKZN? Do you know what I do? I do this. Because you cannot have access to the kinds of information and opportunities as somebody living in that country. It's not possible. You live here, except you are intentional about it. So I build this kind of structures around myself to make it easy for me to flow through opportunities, either on a push or pull effect. Are you following me? Okay? So let's talk about LinkedIn for a minute. I'm focusing on partnership now, which is a very powerful dimension of internationalization. Okay? Now, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool and potentially the biggest professional network in the world. How many of us have posted anything on LinkedIn in the last 3 months? Show of hands. How many of us have posted something in the last 1 week? So the hands have reduced. So we're going to change that now. Are you ready? Okay, because this is how we start. So have a chat with your group partner, or your new money partner. Okay? And it's a simple activity. I want you to do this just 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, because I need to get moving and I've got many more things to cover. Okay? And all you're doing is, and I'm doing this intentionally so you can jumpstart the process. Okay? Take a selfie of both of you. So I will start. Everybody say peace. There you are. I like that. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so you take a selfie of your group, and now what you now do, now craft a very simple message. Say, for example, you could say, we are right in the middle of a supersonic workshop. I'm just saying. Being delivered by Dr. Odon, where we are discussing potentials or the capacities of internationalization. And then just post it on, do it now, post it on LinkedIn, agree the wordings, post it on LinkedIn and tag each other. You got 5 minutes. Let's go. And by the way, tag me too so I can repost it. Take a selfie, a small short wordings for LinkedIn post, and tell everybody what you are doing right now and how much fun you're having, if indeed you're having fun. And then post that picture on LinkedIn, tag your partner and tag me. Okay, that should be fine now. Everybody good? So that took you 3 to 4 minutes. Now imagine how many activities you'd have as an academic every other day. So I sit down, this is important, one house. Don't worry, you can continue later. I just wanted you to get doing that. You can finish that later. Now, I sit down in many donor assessment meetings. It didn't used to happen before, but in the last 2-3 years, it started happening. What do I mean? Where you'd apply for an international grant, and the first thing the donor or assessor would do is Google you. Did you hear what I just said? Please, we can continue later. One house. Thank you. So because you missed a very important point. Okay? Now, it didn't used to happen before, but now it does. So when you send your proposal for application to big donors now, and I've been in a room where this has happened, the first thing they do, before even beginning to go into your application, is they Google you. Now imagine they Googled you, and Google is having an epileptic fit, trying to find you. Or Google finds and finds and finds you. Then Google says, did you mean... Now we have a problem, don't we? Or imagine it Googles you or she Googles you, and in your application is an engineering project, and you are the principal investigator. But everything they find about you on Google search is about fashion design. If you had money, would you give to that person? Think about it for a minute. There's a disconnect between who you say you are and who we see you are. So, and I've met many academics who say, but Doc, I'm a very private person. I'm very quiet. Excuse me? I haven't told you to tell us which food you eat. Are you following me? I haven't asked you to tell everybody what color you like. I've told you to tell people what you do. You can't be private about that. Okay? I've lost count how many times I've gotten deals, amazing deals, or even contracts, just because someone read a LinkedIn post. It's very funny. So I was just in Burkina Faso just few days ago. I've been in, I think, my 4th country in 2 weeks. So that's how much I travel. And it was right in the middle of an exercise like this. So I've just posted, you know that picture I just took? I've already posted it on LinkedIn. Okay? And the picture says, so I just did a post on LinkedIn. And just as I was posting it, within 5 minutes, I get a message in my inbox from a lady in Malawi asking, oh, that must be a very exciting workshop. Are you okay to fly in to deliver the same workshop to us in Malawi? Well, Malawi, how much do you charge? So it was so surprising because it was right between 5 minutes of doing the post. So I now had to I screenshot the inbox to the room. And they were like, really? Yes, really. If people don't know what you do, how do they engage? That's how intentional you have to be. And if you're thinking, but Doc, I'm very busy. It goes back to the same point. Look for a smart student and appoint the person your social media manager. I don't know, how much might you need for internet data that will be enough for a student for a month? I don't know what the value is like in how much? Just give me a sense. Talk to me. 5 gig? How much is 5 gig? That's, yeah, for the month. That's nothing, right? Even that is nothing. So imagine you empower a young person, and each time you go for a meeting, like my prof would do, the person knows you are going for this meeting, and she follows you or he follows you, and takes a picture. So when you take a picture, the sound does chakam, chakam, chakam. I call this a chakam effect. Just take a picture, and just does something nice. Oh, professor has just been to the office of the vice chancellor having critical conversations about new dimensions of internationalization towards resource mobilization. This is grammar. You see my point? It's about being intentional, about even being known, because that is the world we live. I'm sorry, it's no longer a question of, because even the donor wanting to give you money has handles. So even the donor that you are asking for money for has TikTok handle, LinkedIn handle, Instagram handle. Are they silly? Are they stupid? Because they actually expect you. Do you know how cool it is to write a proposal? And in the proposal, even when they haven't asked you, and I do this all the time, I'll write a communication piece section. I'll find a way and incorporate it in the proposal. What am I saying? I'm saying, if you give me this grant, any time, any activity, the world would know. Okay. Did you get that? Okay. I will create a special hashtag just for your project. If you mistakenly give me this money, everybody will know about you. That's how intentional I get. And there's actually a reason why I do that. Because I seem to have discovered something that most people who give money have in common. Can you guess what it is? They like every other person to know that they're giving money. Have you noticed? Most people who give money want everybody else to know that they're giving money. I even know of cases where the money they used to promote the money they were given was more than the money they gave. It's very unethical, terrible, but that's the world we live. So chances are, if you went to the website of donors, you know, that first activity, knowing who gives money, chances are you would see the list of people who have won the funding. So if I knew, for example, that they made a call for proposals in April last year, because you can tell on the website, and then they made a call April the year before last, and April the year before last, what does it mean? Thank you. That means that they potentially will make a call in April next year. So what do you think I do? I write them. And I say, dear so-and-so, upon my careful investigation, oh, I should be locked up. Because I have literally hunted funders down. They know me and I know them. And why shouldn't they know me? That's why, like my sister said during the tea break, I can never be broke. Is what she said during tea break. And I agree with her. I can never be broke when I know who has money. So I will write and say, dear so-and-so, upon careful investigation, I discovered that you gave a call for proposal submission in April last year. Is there a potential you might do the same thing April next year? And if that is the case, do you already know what the potential themes or areas of focus might be? I am yet to see any funder who has said no to that question. It's a simple, basic question. As a matter of fact, it shows to them you're interested enough in the call to want to find out even before the call is out. So that means from August, September, the year before, if I know the call is coming, what do I start doing? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Prof. I start preparing. I put documents together. So you will never find a situation where I am in a rush trying to meet a deadline. Why do you have to keep letting opportunities bump into you? When you can be a bit more intentional and be the one bumping into opportunities. That requires a level of intentionality. Okay? And also putting together a specific team. I call them my money crew. So, action point. It's a very simple, seriously, it's a very simple team, money crew. And I'll tell you who makes up my money crew. My money crew, you have the sourcing person, so the guy who finds. So this is always a young person. So like in my money crew, I've got a young person in different countries, and I do pay them. And so their job is to search around for opportunities in that country without me having to stress myself. I pay them their internet data and a small stipend. And these are students, and they are so happy. And if you see their CV, it's incredible. Because they can now state that they were part of the people who found the funding for the project that was funded. Imagine an undergraduate student having that in their CV. That's power. That's incredible power to a young person. So what you require is a sourcing person who finds. You require a liaison person, so the person who can navigate partners, who looks at a call and knows this call requires 2-3 partners, can communicate with them and do all of that. Number 3, you require a finance person. This is the part most academics fail. Because you are a professor of physics doesn't mean you know about money. I'm sorry, but it's true. Okay, I've seen amazing proposals that is very technical in nature, but when it comes to the budget, it's really bad. Okay, so I don't even bother myself. So look for somebody, can be a master's degree student in accounting. Because the way they see money, you can never see. They've been trained this way since they're undergraduate. They understand spreadsheets the way you will never will. So don't even bother. So focus on the important thing. Put the proposals together. Find a finance person in your money crew. What they can do for you, you won't believe it. You know the feeling of focusing on the proposal, but I know that somebody is dealing with the budgeting. That just makes your life really easy, okay? So the finance person. And the final person, obviously, is the proposal writer. Then that can be your own focus. Let me surprise you with something. So I checked before I flew into SA. Can you guess how many live funded projects Lancaster University has running now? Funded, live. If I told you, you wouldn't even believe it, because when they told me, I almost fell over. I almost fell down. How many live funded projects do you think Lancaster University has? 10? Higher? Pardon? A lot higher. A lot. You can check this, by the way. You can literally write. You can decide to write to Lancaster University faculty or department that focus on funding. It's called the research office, and ask. It's over 3,000. So let me say it again. Over 3,000. One university. That's how much money there is in this world. Because there's a structure in place. There is somebody who looks for partnerships. There is somebody who writes proposals. So a professor who writes proposals doesn't bother about collecting CVs. I've lost count how many times somebody's in a hurry to submit, and what is holding them from submitting a proposal for funding is they're waiting for the 2-page CV of a professor. But that's because the average professor's CV is 30 pages. You know the stress to convert a 30-page CV to 2 pages. So what do you think I have done in my money crew? I actually have a folder called 2-page CVs for funding. So in that folder, there are over 100 CVs across different disciplines. So it means that my response time to opportunities is very fast. Because all the materials I need, we spend time putting it together. What do you require? Problems, case for support, yeah? CVs, even support letters. I have different templates for different subject areas. So if I want a support letter, I just say, Prof, I'm sending you something. Look at it, put your name, remove, addition, and send it back. It's easier than asking Prof to write a support letter, and you never hear from him. Because he's a very busy man. Okay? Since we know documentations are required for research mobilization, spend some time articulating them, making it easy for response time. And obviously, making sure that you've already put the framework in place for your partnership dimension. And all of this is influenced from your outlook. I have got only 5 minutes left, so I want to open to questions, because I think it would be unfair if I don't end it with I responding to 1 or 2 questions. Yes, Prof.
Yeah. Okay. Just a quick one, Prof. A question that I have. Many professors do raise money, but once it gets to the system, you remain broke.
Okay.
Because it's so difficult to actually get it to you. You may still get it for other projects and other things that you want to do. The university is happy.
Yeah.
But if you want to benefit from the money that you've raised,
That's right.
or you end up having disciplinary committees on your way.
Okay.
So
actually, really, what do you do? It's a really good question, Prof. Actually, a very practical question as well. So some universities, I don't know how UKZN is or other universities are, some universities have put a structure in place where if you raise funding, a percentage of the funding goes into a pot, which you can use to activate activities like going for conferences and workshops. It's yours to spend. Doesn't go into your pocket, okay? Some have that structure. Now, some universities even have a further structure where they will say, once you get funding, there's a reallocation of your time. Because remember that university, whether you like it or not, even though they give you a monthly salary, they're actually paying you a daily rate. So daily rate is a dimension in international funding. So it's integrated. So if you are paying say $5,000 a month, if there's 20 months, 20 days in a month, that means you are paid $25 a day. Am I getting my maths right? You know what I mean? Now look at the difference here. The difference is when you get international funding, okay? Now what happens is you allocate, say for example, 7 or 10 days, but it's at an international rate of say $400 per day. So what universities do is that they can swap your hours to use for work, and you can replenish it with the hours you're spending to this project. So you're still working, but now for a daily rate, you are paid higher. Yeah. Some have that structure. But in case that structure doesn't exist at all, this is where the individual dimension comes in, okay? Because that even happens to me. Now, it's not difficult if you apply for funding and you have to get support letter from the university. Because when the money comes, it comes where? It comes to university's account. But if you are a co-investigator on somebody else's call, okay, they pay you, not the university. Does that make sense? Okay, so so you have to be very systematic how you approach that perspective, because what it means is that putting yourself intentionally on different projects gets you funding for the work you do, because it is you they need. It's your expertise, not your university. That's a very simple way of balancing that. But appropriately and institutionally, except that structure is in place, it's going to remain difficult. So I'm only giving you a solution, some kind of an idea of what you might start doing differently. Any other questions? It can be a comment. Doesn't have to be a question. Yes, sir?
Thanks, Prof, for the opportunity. Please tell me, have you ever come across a situation where you applied for the funding and you are not successful at it? If so, how did you deal with it?
That's a really good point. So this is the big issue that frustrates many people, is application lethargy. Because, I've applied for I've spent like 3 weeks writing this, and then that crazy email of, hello, dear Professor this, we are sorry, and your heart just sinks, okay? Now, that used to happen to me, but it rarely happens to me anymore. And I'll tell you why it does. So even though what I mean is, I don't win every funding I apply for, but that feeling of not wanting to respond again doesn't happen anymore, which is what I'm thinking you're referring to. How do you deal with that? The reason is because I now have a team. There is nobody I know who wins a lot of money who does it on their own. That just makes no sense. Okay? Because if you share the work, someone is doing this. Someone is collecting CVs. If you don't win it, you also share the stress. But it also means that because you have a team, you can respond to a lot more. Because guess what? The more you apply, the more you win. It's that simple. If you apply for 5 opportunities every 4 months, chances is you'll get 1 or maybe none. But imagine you apply for 20 every month, 20. Whether you're the one leading it or you're a partner in someone else being the lead, then your chances is increasing. And look at even beautiful thing. The more you win, the more you win. It's how funding works. Because then you begin to build a track record. Because what is the biggest thing a funder wants to know to give you his or her money is, can you do what you said you need the money for? And for them, the biggest evidence you can do it is because you've done it before. It's as simple as that. And so try and start a process where you begin to do something differently, and it can't be organic. I'll say it again. Resource mobilization cannot be organic. It has to be strategic and intentional. Okay? Any other final questions? Or that's a wrap-up? Thank you much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a lovely, lovely day.
Well, there's a glimmer of hope that we won't be broke anymore as professors. Thank you. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we can go for lunch now. I know we've just come back from tea, but because we've been trading our time, we can go for lunch. and then come back for the next session, which starts at 12:30. So in fact, I think the easiest thing is for us to go right away, have our lunch, limited time, and then we come back. Our assumption was that you were having tea, not lunch in that tea. So you still need your lunch. There's a place for your lunch, if possible. Any wise idea on how to handle this? The next session, okay. Okay, the words of wisdom says that, well, let's just go ahead with our session, and when we finish that, we can go for our lunch. You seem to like that one. Yes. Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Now we move to our next session, which is on innovative strategies for Africa-centered internationalization, focus on knowledge exchange and best practices. And we're going to have two people here. It's Ms. Omotola Akindolani, is a manager for Statistics Unit, South African Qualifications Authority, that's SAQA. And then we'll also have Ms. Hab Boshoff, who is the director and founder of Knowledge Collaboration. Can they please come forward so that we can just get going with this one? Thank you very much. Welcome.
Only thing we will have to do, Prof, is to see if we can connect this. Can you connect mine? Will it be fine?
I do have a normally loud voice. Good afternoon, colleagues. Can you all hear me? Are we all awake? I was counting on this being held after lunch, because after lunch, everyone's tired and sleepy. So now, Prof, you've broken my run. So, thank you very much for the very informative session. What you will find in my presentation is there are lots of synergies between myself and the doctors, but I bring a more boring perspective, I think, more around legislation, policies, those kind of very interesting things. So I won't tell you the difference between money and money, but I will definitely tell you what it is that we do and our part in internationalization. My name is Tola. I work for the South African Qualifications Authority. I bring greetings from SAQA, fondly known as SAQA. Today I'm just going to take you through a little bit about what SAQA does, how it links to internationalization, and how we partner and work with similar entities and higher education institutions in particular. My outline is a very short one. I'll talk about SAQA and the National Qualifications Framework. Very important. You can't talk one without the other. They're like 5 and 6. They follow each other. I'll talk about some enabling strategies that SAQA has been involved in regarding internationalization. I'll bring a numbers perspective because, like we've learned this afternoon, data is important. Data contextualizes, and data helps you find a way forward. And I'll just leave with some key takeaways. Who is SAQA? It's a public entity that was established in 1995 by an act of parliament. It's a regulatory body and the custodian of the South African National Qualifications Framework. I'll talk a little bit about the National Qualifications Framework soon. SAQA is located in the administrative capital of Pretoria, South Africa. And we have about 100 committed staff dedicated to education, training, skilling, reskilling, and everything that revolves around that. The vision is to have a world-class national qualifications framework that works for the people in South Africa. What are some of our responsibilities? We've got quite a few. Apart from overseeing the NQF, we also advise the Minister of Education, Higher Education and Training on NQF matters. We develop and implement NQF policies. This one's a particular favorite of mine. SAQA maintains a national learners records database. What does this mean? That means every individual who has gone through the education system in South Africa there's a strong possibility that if it's a digitized record or if it's an electronic record, your record is stored on the National Learners Records database. So this enables us to see learning pathways, for instance, of an individual learner. What we also do, and maybe that's a little bit what's pertinent to this particular summit, is we register qualifications and professional designations on the NQF. We recognize professional bodies, so there are lots of professional bodies, but there's a public trust in SACWA-recognized professional bodies. We provide an evaluation and advisory service for foreign qualifications. We provide verification services for national qualifications as well. So learners who are coming into the country or students who are coming into the country to study, we evaluate their qualifications and sort of compare them to the South African qualifications that we have so that we're able to say, you can go ahead and study this, for instance. And on the other side, we also evaluate and verify qualifications within the system. So students from UKZN can call SACWA and say, what do you have on the system for me? Can you see, am I there? Can you verify that I did indeed attain this qualification? Also, speaking of partnerships, which we've heard a lot about today, we conduct research and collaborate with international counterparts, and we inform the public, like I am doing today, about the NQF. What is this NQF? The South African National Qualifications Framework is a comprehensive system for the classification, registration, publication, and articulation of quality-assured national qualifications and part qualifications. This NQF is made up of 3 sub-frameworks. It's interesting because other countries have NQFs. There are about 190 plus countries that have individual NQFs. However, South Africa's one is subdivided into 3. Each of these 3 sub-frameworks is managed by a quality council. And so if you look at my diagram there at the other end, you will see that for the general sub-framework, that's a sub-framework that handles schooling. So up to school leaving level, high school, matriculation, you have that blue level. The higher education qualification sub-framework is the black. So everything from higher certificates to diplomas, and in the middle there you have the NQF levels that sort of talk about how you progress on this framework. On the right-hand side in red is the occupational qualifications sub-framework, which talks to your occupational and vocational qualifications. And each of these have NQF levels that are able to sort of let a learner know what they should be doing and what they're able to do. The South African NQF is a 10-level framework, which you will find in some other countries. You could have a 7-level framework, an 8-level framework. And so when you have students that are coming into the country with these different levels, we're able to look at it and say, you're coming with your level 7. On the NQF, South African NQF, it's a level 10, for instance. What is SACWA's role in internationalization? As I explained before, international students who apply for admission to, for instance, postgraduate qualifications at South African higher education institutions must submit their qualifications to SACWA for verification and evaluation. At the end of this process, which SACWA goes through, there's a certificate of evaluation that is issued to the student. This indicates a recognition decision that we have compared your qualification, the international qualification, with a South African qualification, and we will then streamline the assessment and verification of that qualification with a national one. So remember earlier in the presentation, there was that discussion around mobility, international mobility of students. I think this is a key part of some of the work that we do. I will go back. All right. Seeing as there is a mobility, there's an outbound and an inbound. Inbound talks to international students that come into the country, and outbound talks about South African students that go out and look for other opportunities. So we do have, SACWA has a foreign qualifications evaluation service. Learners can first apply, and there's an entire process that I won't go into now, but please feel free to engage myself and my colleague, Ms. Tato Rampisa, afterwards about what the process is. So there's an application, there's a screening, there's a registration, there's a verification process that involves, we spoke about proof and evidence earlier, that involves submitting certain documents so that we can verify that you do have what you do have. And then there's that comparison that happens where then you are issued a foreign qualification is then compared, and then the student is issued with a foreign certificate of evaluation. When it comes to the outbound, so learners that, South African students that go out and look for other opportunities, no matter what it is. One of the things that SACWA does is we deal with, we call them individual verification letters. This service started in 2019. It used to be handled by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and we sort of took that up just in 2019 before the entire world was disrupted with COVID. This is a service for individuals who would need a verification letter confirming that their tertiary qualifications or their higher education qualifications obtained in South Africa, they need verification that it exists. The verification letter is limited to registered higher education qualifications, and so it does not include short courses or foreign qualifications or professional designations. And again, there is a process around that. The turnaround time for this is 25 working days. And for the inbound one, which I explained earlier, the turnaround time is, I think, 70 days. All right. There are challenges with this. What are some of the challenges that we experience with this international mobility, whether inbound or outbound? There's always that complexity of diverse education systems. I gave an example earlier where you have a country that doesn't even have an NQF, for instance, and the students want to come into South Africa. We have to do the homework. We have to research and make sure that we're not disadvantaging that learner. First, once we've established that the qualification they've achieved is real, then you have to think about how does this compare to a South African qualification. We have instances where people come in also with maybe from countries where the NQF is not as rich, or the levels are different, and we always have to make that decision to have a proper evaluation so that we don't disadvantage the learner. In the same light, there's limited access to international databases. Not all countries have that information that enables a rich and proper evaluation. So we have to think about ways to work around that. There are unverified institutions. Sometimes there are, and sometimes or a lot of times, depending on how you look at it, there are documentation requirements where there's a set of documents that are required for specific countries, and the students either do not understand or they just hope that they can get away with it. So we have a lot of incorrect, incomplete documentations that we need to work around. There's always regulatory compliance and policy updates because we work in that regulatory space. And there's also the issue around fraud and misrepresentation. Recently, the legislation that gives SACWA life, the National Qualifications Framework Act, was recently updated and promulgated in 2019. The update includes giving SACWA additional responsibility for misrepresentation and fraudulent qualifications in the country. A part of the act, for instance, says that if after verification or evaluation, we'll take, in this instance, we'll assume we're talking about SACWA, but it speaks to the broader environment. A qualification or part qualification is found to be inauthentic or is found to be misrepresented. SACWA must then do a couple of things. They must, for instance, they must inform the requester and the holder of the qualification or part qualification of the finding. We must record such a finding in the register of misrepresented qualifications. and these are some of the other things. So when you put this in the context of inbound qualifications, you do realize that we do have a big work, our work cut out for us. So what are some of the enablers we think from our day-to-day work around evaluation, verification, and research of these partnerships and internationalization? It's such a big word. You remember at the beginning of my presentation, I did say we do have a lot of synergies, but we cannot emphasize enough the importance of international collaborations, partnerships, and knowledge exchange. SACWA does a lot of work in this space where we have to work with partner countries to understand their systems, so that when the students are coming in, for instance, there's an opportunity to speed up the evaluation, having signed mutual recognition of qualification documents or memorandum of understanding. We do a lot of collaboration with our fellow African countries because, like someone said at the beginning of the day, that there must be a focus on Africa within ourselves, and we don't always have to go out to look for that information. So we collaborate a lot with African countries, whether in helping them with information that leads to the development of their national qualifications framework, or just sharing some of the challenges that we have in our spaces. In the last 3 months, for instance, we have hosted delegates from Namibia, Malawi, Eswatini, Kenya, who have come to SACWA, South Africa, and said, you have this information. How did you grow your NQF? What were the challenges that you've experienced? How do we facilitate the easier mobility of some of our learners who are coming into South Africa to come and, for higher education? We also participate in a lot of forums, international and local, and we believe that getting the word out there then, makes life easier for all of us. The Act empowers SACWA to offer advisory services, so you do find a lot of students who want to come into the country from other countries have a lot of questions. What's the education like? Will I fit in? We offer some advisory services to these individuals, providing information about the South African education system and offering guidance on further studies, where to study, specific qualifications, etc. There's research and continuous improvement. You cannot internationalize without research and continuous improvement. So SACWA constantly undertakes extensive international research and benchmarking to stay updated with global education trends and practices. So in a way, while we work with our neighbors, we also look out for inspiration and continuous improvement. We've got alignment with international and national policies, focusing on quality assurance, and because part of our mandate and part of the objectives of the NQF is to redress past inequalities, there's a lot of focus around and engagement around some of these national policies, whether it's the recognition of prior learning, and alignment with conventions like the Addis Convention. SACWA recently, maybe in the last 5 years, has started a project. And maybe that's where some of the information from the doc today about how to find money and how to fund will come useful, is we've engaged in a refugee project. What we realize is there are lots of refugees that come into South Africa, people with refugee status, but they cannot study because they do not have the qualifications that we need to evaluate and compare with them. They do not have that physical proof that is usually required for verification. So SACWA began a couple of years ago working with a funder and a donor on assisting some of these refugees and asylum seekers that we've identified with how do we evaluate their qualifications without the physical proof of documentation. So that's some of the things that we were engaged in. And of course, for public information and transparency, I think is a great enabler. We always provide detailed guidelines and information about our evaluation processes. I'm going to take some time to speak about data, one of my passions. Remember, I had introduced earlier that SAQA holds a national learners records database. What is this thing? It's a system or a database that contains information on learners, simply put. What is on the NLRD first is all the NQF registered qualifications. So there are lots of qualifications out there, but if it's not registered on the NQF, it is viewed as inauthentic. So there are about 8,600 qualifications, roughly on the NQF, registered on the NQF, as at September 2024. 7,000 of those qualifications are from the higher education sector. The NLRD is an integrated information system which facilitates the management of the NQF. There are other databases as well that make up this system. There's a foreign qualifications database, which we have information about inbound qualifications and people, and there's a verifications database as well. So I'm going to show you some numbers, and some of these are linked to mainly the foreign qualifications because we are talking internationalization. So I thought maybe just share some numbers around inbound qualifications that we have with us. So over the last 5 years, we have evaluated at least 66, we have completed 66,000 evaluations, foreign qualification evaluations in the last 5 years. This picture, of course, you always know there's that disruption from 2020 to 2023, thereabouts, but you can see we're slowly beginning to get back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of the numbers of people coming into the country specifically to study. The 66,000 qualifications or evaluations roughly translates to about 50,000, 53,000, so about 10,000, roughly 10 on the average, 10,000 per month. Majority of the reason is to come and study, but of course there are other opportunities for people to gain employment and otherwise. In the last 5 years, majority of the people that have come in inbound are males. I don't know if that makes any difference, but the doc was speaking about gender earlier, so 58% males, 42% females. More of the younger crowd, young to mid, so 32% are in the age groups 21 to 30, and then 40% are between 31 and 40. The 41 to 50-year-olds, I hope they're coming to study because we believe in the concept of lifelong learning, and you're never too old or too young to learn. Where are these evaluations or where are these qualifications coming from? It's good to see some of our neighbors on there. Zimbabwe is a major contributor to inbound qualifications. But interestingly, we've seen the rise of the UK and United States in the last 5 years. Other countries are Lesotho, India, Nigeria, Ghana, Namibia, China, and Eswatini. When we look at it holistically, 60% of the qualifications that we have coming into the country are from the African continent. So I think that's a good thing, but there's opportunity to do more. What kind of qualifications are coming in? 30% of them are at NQF level 7. So at NQF level 7, you have your bachelor's degree, so higher education qualifications coming into the country. And popular fields of study from these qualifications include education, training, and development. So I don't want to say teachers, but yeah, a lot of those are from education. Business, commerce, and management. Physical, mathematical, computer, and life sciences make up 14%, and health sciences and social services make up 11%. So just a quick snapshot. What are the key takeaways from my presentation? For internationalization to happen, there must be an emphasis on continued collaboration and engagement, and not just within, but without. We must maintain partnerships and active participation on various international platforms. There must be a commitment to research and continuous improvement, which ensures that our efforts remain relevant. There must be ongoing support to enhance recognition practices across African continents, whether the recognition practices recognizing qualifications, recognizing skills, all goes towards strengthening recognition systems. And there must be that emphasis on data. Without data, you cannot tell if you're moving forward or backward, and you cannot tell where to place the emphasis. So encouraging data-driven decision-making, identifying opportunities, and measuring any progress made. I hope I've been able to keep you captivated for a bit. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take questions, comments.
Thank you for your very informative presentation. I want to just speak a bit about the mobility of students to, number one, to the African continent and to South Africa specifically, take into consideration the South African Qualifications Authority. I saw that mutual recognition of qualifications is one of the enablers in terms of mobility and partnerships on the African continent. In terms of the work that SACO is doing on the continent of Africa, how far are we with the completion of an African qualifications framework that recognizes qualifications on our continent to make it easier for students to move in between countries on this African continent in this co-creation space? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll take that and then I'll come back so I don't lose my train of thought. Thank you for that question. Remember my talk around partnerships. South Africa is very involved in what we call the, I'd say two concepts or two entities. There's the African Qualification Verification Network, and there's also the ACQF, the African, I forget. I'm looking at Tato to remind me. But it's like the SADC QF. So the Southern African Development Community Qualifications Framework. We're very involved with that because with the SADC, we've got 16 country states. And of those 16, South Africa is the one with the most advanced qualifications framework. The first thing we want to do is advocate for qualifications framework across all countries because it then makes recognition a little bit easier. So we are very involved in those talks with the SADC QF and the verification network. These kind of talks, and there are constantly discussions, seminars, all of that happening that we work collaboratively towards. Now, I cannot give you a date when to say, oh, by 2029, definitely. But these structures exist so that we continuously build on that to enable the kind of mobility that you're talking about. But South Africa leads in those spaces and SACWA really helps shaping the talks in those spaces. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Questions? Yes, sir. Oh, ma'am. I'm so lost. Thank you. Yes.
Good day, colleagues. My name is Oli Hide. I'm the Manager Central Student Records at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. You alluded to foreign certificate of evaluation. So when you evaluate a foreign qualification, do you focus only on the degree certificate?
No.
Or you also look at the academic record as well?
There are a couple of documents that we look at. It's not just the certificate we must look at, and there's a whole list of requirements, your transcript, your actual awarded certificate, and some additional documents, because it varies from country to country. There's some countries that we really need specific documentation from, and others that are just generic.
Now, when we look at the transcript, because there is a high risk with transcript where it can actually be manipulated or whatever, especially for postgrad admission. How do you deal with that? because if I apply to do BCom honors in economics, there's a certain percentage that is needed for me to actually have passed economics. And now I go and manipulate my percentage and I submit the documents to you. And you give a foreign certificate of evaluation without having verified actually the academic record, which is a high risk for us at the moment. How do you deal with that one?
I'm just going to talk about two things that I understand in the process very well. So the first thing is we don't encourage the students to submit their transcripts directly. We partner with the particular institutions where the student is coming from. So we reach out to the institution. That information around the details must come from the institution. The student is not allowed to bring in and submit a transcript. So for us, that helps with building partnerships. So in each country, we either go through the ministry of that country or through what would be their version of a DHET, or whichever entity is responsible for higher education. Then that comes directly from them. There's very little effort around manipulation there. Part of what we do is also we partner with industry experts, qualification experts, that sort of help us look through to make sure that there's no false information or fraudulent information that is looked at. Tato, did you want to add to what I said?
Yes, thank you, Tola. As part of the evaluation process, we don't really do an analysis of the grades. There are institutions that where there is big risk, they communicate that don't accept transcripts from the students, we will provide the academic transcripts. But what we do is we verify authenticity, so we will write to the institution to verify that Tato does indeed have the qualification. But in terms of the grades, that's it. On what we check for on the transcript, we check the structure of the qualification. If for this number of credits you need 3 years and so many modules, that's what we do in terms of when we do a comparison. But we don't really analyze the percentages on the modules. Thank you.
So can I also ask the very last question?
Yes.
My last question is related to fraudsters or fraudulent certificates that you come across. And if, say, a student, alleged student of University of KwaZulu-Natal has submitted fraudulent information to you, do you list that student or you flag that student after receiving an information from us that this student should not apply for any other position anywhere in South Africa? How do you handle that, perhaps?
Thank you so much. Those are very interesting questions. Remember at the beginning of my presentation, I said SACO has just taken on this national role for handling misrepresentation and fraudulent qualifications. So part of what we're busy with, the straight answer is right now, there is no structured process. But because the Qualifications Authority has been mandated to take on this role, we're busy with a lot of things about putting in processes. So a policy is on the way. There will be regulations on the way on how we handle this. For now, there is what we call a misrepresentation register. What it has is names and qualifications that have been misrepresented. But those names come from the 3 quality councils that handle the 3 sub-frameworks of the NQF. So we do have submissions from Umalusi around misrepresentations that they have picked up in their sector, which is the schooling sector. We do have a misrepresentation list from the QCTO, which handles the occupation sector. We don't have misrepresentation, a consolidated list from the higher education sector yet. And that's because each institution in South Africa is a certifying body. So we're putting in processes in place to sort of engage the institutions to understand what their process is and help build a consolidated list for misrepresentation in the higher education sector. So I definitely will be chatting to you, sir, because you look like the man to speak to. Does that answer your question? Yes. Can I turn to my right? Sir, I have, oh, last one. It's not me, Prof said the last one. But please note, I will be in the foyer with my colleague for lunch. I will take any questions that you have. I won't forget. But last one, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Professor Stephen Mutula. I am a dean in the School of Management, IT and Governance. In the last 2 years, we have been going around outside the country to recruit international students, particularly for postgraduate studies. And we have gotten quite a lot of students who have interest to study here. But the challenge has been when it comes to SAQA verification. Some of them have taken over a year without receiving the verification and they have moved on. So my question is there anything we can do at our university level to assist SAQA to expedite that particular process? Because it is pulling back our internationalization efforts. Secondly, I saw on your presentation that the bachelor's degree is baked at both NQF level 7 and 8. What does that mean? I know that many students from Kenya who come here to do a postgraduate, particularly after they have finished their 4-year degree, are picked at level 7. So they don't go directly to masters, but they go to honors. And they don't feel happy about that. But other countries, I know, I am told Ghana, for example, they get into NQF level 8. Maybe you can just shed some light.
Thank you so much, Prof. Stephen. The good news about coming to summits like this is you don't come alone, you come with the experts in the space. So I'm going to defer those 2 questions to Ms. Rampisa to answer.
Thank you, Tola. In terms of our verification processes, we rely on the ministries of education and the institutions outside of the country, so where the students have studied. And like Tola alluded earlier, some of these countries don't have established systems yet, and some of the records are still paper records. So we write to them and we request the information about accreditation status of the institution, authenticity of the award, and what your credits and then compare it to the South African degree. So the outcome can be that the level is higher or the level is lower. It actually depends on the structure of the qualification. And if you'd like more information in terms of that particular country, you can get in touch with us and we will refer you to a credential evaluator that can give you more information.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your questions. I'm going to pause here because Prof is giving me the eye. Thank you very much, and thank you for your questions and your listening. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Zipo, is it on or must I still put it on? Colleagues, I know I'm now in a very dangerous terrain, and that means, like, even though you had a snack, which could be a problem in itself, I'm now standing a little bit between you and lunch, not only between you and lunch, but also between you and some fresh air. And I wasn't sure if the lights going on was early Diwali celebrations or a sign that I need to be quick. But let's take some time and dig a little bit into this very important, but quite a heavy theme that the UKZN team has given me. So let's get this presentation going. It is that one. I need glasses these days because I can't see anymore. That's fine. Yeah, of course. Thank you. So thank you very much to the UKZ team for this invitation. As Prof said, my name is Yuba Bosov. Yes, it's a strange name, and yes, you are very welcome to ask me about it, but not as part of the questions. We can have that discussion over lunch. I work under the umbrella of a company called the Knowledge Collab. And the reason why I established this company is because I got tired of working for one university. So now I work for many. So I see people shaking their heads, yes, that's me. And so this morning within the Knowledge Collab, I'm a facilitator, I am a trainer, I work on university strategy, I work on international partnerships, I work on grant writing of proposals, I train academics, I train students. But I'm not saying this to you as an advertisement for the company. I'm saying it to you to say that this morning what I am sharing with you is an extract of my lived and learned experiences through these various interactions, both on the African continent and abroad. I've also worked for European organizations that I shall not name because I might frame them in less than positive light in the rest of this. But what I really want to get to, and what I usually do within the things that I do, is I talk less, I listen more, and I ask questions. So this morning I am on the other side and I have to speak a little bit more. But really I want to involve you. This is a conversation. I am a conversationalist. And through this process I hope for two things. One, that we can get very practical in what does it mean to have innovative strategies for Africa-centered internationalization, focusing on knowledge exchange, and I will get to this, but maybe not best practices, but good practices. What does that look like? And the second thing is I hope that through what I'm saying, be it criticism, be it critical reflection, be it tongue in the cheek, that we can all expand what we call in coaching our structure of interpretation. How do we go from seeing this to seeing this? And sometimes it's only a millimeter, but it does mean that you're letting something else in. And I hope that that can sit with you this morning. So, let me start. You've all been sitting, I've observed you, you've all been sitting in exactly the same spot. Even those that have left the room and come back, you come back to exactly the same spot. So in terms of illustrating this innovation, I'm going to challenge you to get up and to move your position. Anywhere, I am not telling you where to go. And on your way to that new position, ask one person what they think about the meaning of innovation. Don't overthink it, don't make it a long thing. Move your position and ask one person on your way, what do they think about innovation? You see, when you're on the other side, you follow the instructions, because you know what you will stand there. I will tell you in a minute. Okay, if you've moved position, and even if you have not moved position, that's also okay. We'll get to you. Just take a seat, and then we'll go on. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. Are you going to tell us? At least partially. You can take any seat you want. I didn't say you can't take the same seat. I said earlier you have to move positions. People in higher education always overthink the instructions. You bring complexity where there is not complexity. Perfect. Move positions, changed your gaze. So why did I do this silly exercise? One, because I could see people are sleeping. But two, I also want to illustrate something in the theme, and that is that innovation does not happen without change. And usually we think of innovation in a very disruptive way. But disruptive can be big or small. So on your way there to this new position, and if you've not moved, let me be critical, there won't be innovation. If you don't move in any part, in your mind, in your position, there will not be innovation. Innovation does not happen by staying in the same place. So this is the very first important point to consider when we think of innovative strategies in African-centered internationalization. All right, so remember this silly exercise, get up, change your place, that is innovation. Oh, I see the Diwali lights again. So when we think of innovation, we usually think, and let me check, if you think of innovation, how many of you think of a new product or technology? No? Innovation is not that. No? And so I asked my friend, not my friend Google, my friend ChatGPT, and she is very knowledgeable, no? And she helps me a lot. So this is taken strictly like that. I didn't add any of my own thinking here. But innovation is the process of creating, improving, or implementing new ideas. No? So even in just moving now and you hearing from somebody else, you could be innovating. It's not a new product. You don't have to think of a new spaceship to be innovative. No? Changing your thinking, changing your processes. And this is an extremely important one when we think of African-centered internationalization. Changing our processes. We spoke about how does the money get to the person that actually applied for the money. No? We need to think innovatively about the processes in our institutions. Let me be critical of SAQA. I am regularly. They know me by now. If we say the national policy, and I'll get back to that, the focus of the national policy in South Africa is on creating more opportunities, South Africa, SADC, Africa, and beyond. But we do not, in 2024, rushing into 2025, have a continental framework for the accreditation. We are failing, no? And we are not being innovative, because we have the data. We heard all the data sources that are there. But data that is not used is just numbers on a page. No? Okay, so that's really important in terms of thinking around unpacking this theme. The second important word within this theme is strategy. In universities, people throw strategy around like the shiny toys. Strategy means that it is geared towards a change. And one of my favorite words, impact. If your strategy is only a plan, it's not worth the paper that it's written on. Your strategy needs to be intentional. It needs to be planned. It needs to be directed. It needs to be monitored in some way. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. And that is aimed at creating impact. We've spoken this morning already. Nontle brought a really beautiful example of the African Partnership Universities Alliance. But this is really putting Africa at the center. And it looks different. So let me be very cheeky. How many of you in the room have African partnerships? Aside from South Africa. Okay. No? Important. So look around you who does not have it. Also important. It's not to call you out, it's to say you have a resource in this room that can help you address this. Prof. Odon spoke about it earlier. No? It's a resource, network. No? The permanent secretary in Zambia for education always says to me, he says, your network is your net worth. And he possibly stole it from somebody else, but I'll give it to Prof. Joel. No? Your network is your net worth. Your network does not only mean just I know Maud and Maud knows me. It also Maud knows somebody that I could know potentially if we find that. So that's also really important in thinking. If we think about African-centered, if we don't have that connections, how do we get that? Then the knowledge exchange. This is very important, and I'll get back to it when we get practical. But when we talk about knowledge exchange, it means two ways. Exchange means it goes this way and it goes the other way. It's not the same knowledge that goes back and forth. No. It also means that what I have to share and what Casey has to share, sorry Casey, I'm going to call on the people's names that I know, is of equal importance. And that is something that we often lose within our African partnerships, and I'll get back to that. And then I've already said, can we move from best practice to good practice? We work in higher education. I don't think we should ever get to a point where we've said, I made it. I think it's always about continuing learning and those small increments of getting better. Some things might be pretty good, but we can make it even better. Woo! That's maybe a sign. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. If we take a step back and unpack this big theme, we can ask ourselves, so what are the practices that undermine innovation? What are creating barriers for us? What means that we cannot get it? Because I told you, the innovation is not the big things necessarily. It's also the small steps. And yet we find ourselves, when we reflect, that we're not necessarily making those innovations in small ways, always. So one of the big things, and we talk a lot about this in South Africa, and I'll bring it in when we talk about the practical aspects again, is a lack of equality. And that's why I mentioned this value of knowledge. Everybody's knowledge is equally valuable. And that's very important when you think about new strategies. The superiority complex. Let me illustrate this with an example. And I shared it with Norma this morning when I walked in. I'm working with a group of researchers, excellent African researchers based on the continent. And we're putting a fairly small proposal together. It's not big money, it's 300,000 euros. In the bigger scheme, it's negligible, which I've now said, let's cut it. And this is why. The first email we get back from the European partner, a prominent European institution, the academic says in this, they say, and I will not use the exact phrasing, I'll try and tone it down slightly, but they say, this project means that we will have to work with African partners and send them money. That is problematic. Yes, this is the language that's being used. That undermines innovation. Because what did I say to the team? If this is the institution we are working with, I'm out. I'm done. This is where I draw the line. I don't work like that. Assumptions. In this very same example, there was not one question asked about what is the capacity financially of these institutions that you are proposing to work with. And actually all of these institutions and many more have everything in place. And this money that they are proposing is something that runs through that institution on a daily. But not one, it was an assumption that was made. That hampers innovation. The fourth thing is dependency. Because Because here we now can't submit this application. That's pretty a good application because we need that European partner. Okay, we found 5 others, no problem. No? Dime a dozen as well in this case. But it means that as an African team, for a project that is aimed at Africa, we are dependent on that kind of behavior. We can't innovate. So that's really important to look at this. Another practice that really undermines innovation is distrust and the assumption of distrust. We assume that you're going to get it wrong. We assume that you don't know. And the last thing that I see over and over again in the work that I do is a lack of clarity. And what is the easiest thing? Ask a question of clarity. Ask an open-ended question. If you get stuck, you chat GPT. What is an open-ended question? What, where, how, when, who. Not why. It's judgmental. Okay, another story we can talk about. But I like to think of this from a more positive perspective and really thinking, what are the enabling things? So we can always go around the room and use a method of appreciative inquiry to really dig down what is the enabling environment for innovation, because that gets me excited. The other things make me mad, and I have to do extra training, and I have to do extra meditation to rid me of the nonsense, and then in the morning I can say, this is what we're doing. But what is that enabling environment? And Tola already reached out to it, the policy environment. So how do we use the policies that we have on a country, on an institutional, and on a continental level to drive innovation? What are the things that we hook this on, and then use these policies to keep our governments accountable to support institutions in this endeavor of innovative, African-centered internationalization? To build environments of trust. And how do you build trust? You spend time together. You get to know one another. In this room, you've seen earlier the hands go up. Maybe people simply don't know yet. This is why we're here. We trust one another. It's a space where we can share and exchange. The other very important thing is to establish shared values. And I'll make it a bit practical later, but it's very, very important that in our practices, in our projects and our endeavors of internationalization, that we are clear on what is the shared values. And shared values sometimes means also saying no to things. I'm a yes girl. I'm your girl. If you want a yes, I'm a yes girl. But there are some things when it comes to value that's a hard no for me. A response from a European partner, as the one that I received last night, is a hard no. Even if it was 5 million euros, I would still have said, thank you very much, but you're not the partner that we want to work with. It's not easy, and you get in trouble for that. I have been in trouble with DVCs in this country about saying no to a project. I will still say no if I have the opportunity. And that's very important. If we don't have shared values, I can say 100% that you're going to struggle in this project. Joint ownership. It's not just about having the shared values, but it's also about joint ownership and being very clear that if this project fails, if we do not reach the impact that we have set out, it's all of the partners involved, all of the individuals involved. No? So in farming, and when you work with a farming collective, you know that whatever is the yield, that is what you get. And we take that. As consumers, we say, okay, if the apples are not so great, the poor farmers, they had the wind, they had this, it should be the same. We need to understand that there's also a yield in a project like this. And how do we make sure that if it's not the yield that we expect of, that we can take the ownership of it? And then we have to be very clear. And this is something that you look at, if you look at the explanation that what sits behind innovation, it's around a value creation. So who benefits? All around. And again, this needs to be a shared understanding. Okay, so let's make it a bit more practical. I'm not a lecturer, I'm a facilitator. I like making you talk. I don't like necessarily talking. And I've put, again, this ChatGPT definition of innovation here, because I want you to have it very clear, and specific the last bit of to fulfill unmet needs. Why are we innovating? We are innovating to fulfill unmet needs. And if we look at what's happening on the African continent in terms of partnership, in terms of research output, in terms of the mobility of students, what are the unmet needs that we are dealing with? So I have 3 things that I want to talk about. And the first is really on creating and sustaining reciprocal and mutually beneficial knowledge partnerships. The very first important thing is to be able to reflect on existing partnerships. As you are sitting here, almost all of you have 50 or more partnerships at your institutions that's not active. From the 50, let's work on 100. From the 50 that's active, if you critically review them, how many are mutually beneficial and reciprocal? Who say 5? 10? Okay, maybe 10. Okay. I'll do a partnership evaluation for you, then we see. No? When you go into a partnership, what is your process for going into a partnership? Do you sit down as bilateral partners, multilateral partners, and agree on what are the values? Or do you sign an MOU, you put it in the filing cabinet, and you hope for the best? I call them the I love you, you love me's. What we did in kindergarten. I really like this guy. I'm going to write him a letter. I was forward like that. I write him a letter. I put it in his bag. But I don't put my name. I don't put my name. At least we put on the MOUs, we put our name. But we don't do anything. I don't even look at him because we can't do that. But now I go and I say, I have a boyfriend. I say to people, I have a boyfriend. Universities do the same. We have 100 MOUs. Okay, what are your MOUs doing? And what is that MOU changing? In our partnerships, do we ask critical questions? Or do we just go about it? No. Remember what I said about trust and what is enabling. We have to dismantle. I gave you this example. I have many more of these examples, unfortunately, and many in the room have similar experiences of superiority and assumptions that are made on what can and cannot take place on the African continent. And then when we think of these partnerships, we need to be very comprehensive in nature. We have bilateral partners, the one-on-ones. We have multilateral partnerships. We have networks. Networks are becoming increasingly important in the way that we institutionalize and implement internationalization. But when you enter a network, do you consider who else is at the table? Or do you just say, oh, it's going to be good for me. My institution, I'm good. No. There's a saying that says you are judged by the company that you keep. That's an important consideration, especially if you want to be innovative. If you're going to go into a space that looks exactly the same as you, it's not innovative. It's going to be comfy. It's going to be real comfy. You're going to have great pictures, but you're not going to innovate. And if you are serious and make a commitment to African-centered internationalization, and you enter a network and there's no African partner, or you see the same 5 that we see in all networks, I'll show them to you. Then you also know we are not innovating. We are taking the mainstream. Another interesting one, and here you can really play, is on what we call either triple helix or quadruple helix partners. So it need not be all the same. You can have an African government with a European university with, let's not make it too complicated, a South African NGO. So think of those as well in terms of how do you create these partnerships, who are the stakeholders. Then we have to contextualize our curriculum and our research. Context matters. If you don't understand the context that you are working in, you're never going to be successful and you're never going to be able to truly innovate. Because we can innovate on the first layer, but we're talking here about really deep innovation. So, again, who lectures? Who gives the input? What is the environment that they are lecturing in? It's very easy to say, oh, this university has got no resources. Yeah, okay, maybe we don't have a screen and we don't have fancy mics, but we have people that are there. We have another setup. Do we truly understand that context? What unfulfilled need are we meeting? What is that context that we are working in? Go back to that, the very nature of innovation. Make sure that you are creating spaces for engagement. And I'm not saying this in terms of adopt a girl child. When you have a space, who else are you taking along? Not as your baby brother, but as your partner in this process and in this endeavor. So if you are invited to a network, again, have you asked the question, who else has been invited? Which African partners are represented? Something that's very important in South Africa, and where I think a lot of South African researchers are really leading also the academic narrative, is around decolonization of the curriculum and pedagogy. What are we teaching? Whose knowledge is in the room? And again, it's not about saying one is more important than the other, but it's about inclusivity of knowledge. The same goes for research. It's very important to think in the context of research. Who's researching? What are they researching? Where are they researching? And then the third thing, and I'll park that a bit because I brought in some resources for you as well, but to really localize research and the ownership of research. The African continent contributes less than 1% of global research output. It's not because there are not good researchers in Africa. There's many reasons. I won't get too deep into it. It's not my field of expertise. But one of the reasons is who puts their name first. So this same example, I wrote the proposal. The European professor will be the lead PI. I've rewritten the proposal. I wrote somebody else in. I made it one African, one European, and I made them both co-PIs. And if the funder does not want to accept co-PIs, fine, then we don't get funded. I assume they will, because the call was specifically for Africa. So then we work in equality. The other important thing, and this is also to critically reflect, so I'm not being only critical of the Europeans, so let me be critical of my own government. There's very little incentive for South African researchers to publish in African journals, because it's not recognized by the Department of Higher Education and Training. So we have on the one side a policy that says, listen, you have to be South Africa, SADC, Africa, Global South, the world. We have another policy that says, oh, but if you publish in this journal, you're not getting money. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So we really also need to be critical and think about what are the innovative solutions that we are bringing in here. And then the last element is how in innovation do we leverage technology and digital ways of working. Tomorrow, some of my colleagues from Durban University of Technology will be speaking together with Prof. Msibi on COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. And one of the new initiatives that are launched, and I won't say too much because one, it means I can bring you back to the room tomorrow to learn about it, but I don't steal their thunder either, is AfriCoil. And there's a workshop today. Let me be energetic about it. Casey will do a workshop this afternoon. So if you want to get a little taste of this, let's also look at it this afternoon. What does COIL mean? And how can we use COIL as an innovative methodology and strategy for internationalization? How do we, as institutions of learning, development, EdTech, educational technology, that promotes inclusion, and that's innovative? The Dean this morning said language, and I'm so glad that she brought that up. We use language to say, we can't do this. We can't collaborate with West Africa because we don't speak French. I don't speak French, but I can Google Translate. It's not perfect, but I can get my message across. I can also learn French, but I'm struggling a bit. But that is really important. We put in barriers for ourselves of why we can't do things, while there are already solutions, and solutions that can be tweaked for our context using technology to really be innovative and drive African-centered internationalization. And so I thought it wouldn't be fair if I don't share some resources with you. There's a new UNESCO chair for intercultural competence. You can have this presentation. It was put together for you, so you don't have to take notes of everything. The World Council on Culture also has a specific special interest group on African culture. It's a special interest group. We are all there to share and exchange. Join it. The UNESCO chair is Dala Deerdorf and Davinia Jettu, who you'll meet tomorrow. There's publications on bibliometrics. I didn't pull this out of my pocket. There is already statistics and data, and we need to use that data in an innovative manner to challenge our policymakers, to challenge our institutions to do it differently. And then the third thing I put up there, when we think about, so how do we make it practical? There's an African Charter for Transformative Research Collaboration that gives you very practical tips, in addition to what I've told you and shared with you today, to say you cannot get stuck on the how. The resources are there. And so in the spirit, Harambee is a Kiswahili word that's also the slogan of Kenya, and it says, we all pull together. And if you forget everything else of my story today, the only way that we will truly drive innovative strategies for African-centered internationalization is if we all pull together. Nyabonga. Thank you very much. Oh, and now I have to open it up for questions. I do not have a colleague to defer to, so be kind.
That's so sad.
It's okay, I'll take it. I'll face the music. Any questions, comments, people that think I'm absolutely crazy? Dungan.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and mine is more of a comment than a question. And I think it's very important that you highlighted that in as much as we have institutional strategies that peg us as African universities that are located within the global south and within our regional zones, does the practice translate in terms of the day-to-day? When we're targeting partnerships, is there a vested effort in increasing numbers? And I love the fact that you spoke about impact, that the actual partnerships that we're developing actually have an impact on our institutions. So maybe it's a call to institutions to not just write strategies, but to live through those strategies as well, if we're going to work towards African-centered internationalization. Thanks.
Absolutely. Let me comment on it. I think there's a lot of discussion around how do we drive and how do we measure impact. Impact is not numbers. Impact is change. But you have to envision that change. So if anybody has ever gotten stuck on a logical framework for a big project, this is, people make things up. But at some point you have to reflect. And that's one of the things that we are not good at within universities. We don't take time and reflect and say, if we are critical, what change has this partnership brought about? Not only the 3 students and the 5 staff and the research project, but really critically, what is the impact indicators that we have built in? The other thing I think is really important also for institutions within Africa is to really be clear on, are we African universities or are we universities in Africa? And how do we build the narrative? That's a whole speech on its own, and I won't get involved in it today because I can see you're hungry. But that's also something. How do we create a narrative as universities of what we stand for and what we want? And that we are not ashamed to say that we are different. We look different. We operate different. We are different than Europe, America, South America. What is the true brand of universities in Africa and African universities? Other questions and comments? Prof.
Thank you so much. You talked about decolonization, particularly with regard to the curriculum and research. And I want to tie it to the issue of dependence as well. And Dr. Odon made a powerful presentation on resource mobilization. And most of the funding sources are from the global north. How can we make Africa fairly independent in that particular area?
It's a short answer, but it's not an easy answer. And that is, on the African continent, we have to use our own sources. We have to look at the AAU. We can look at the AU. But as long as we have to look towards the global north, let's use that as a blanket, we will not be able to break free from this dependency. And this is what I've also discussed in many ways. With colleagues that work in fundraising in the US. Fundraising in the US is a big thing. I will never survive. I can't ask for money that many times. But it's one that a dear friend said to me as well. You need to be able at some point to walk away, and you can only walk away when you know there's an alternative source for funding. And I think that is really to consider, how do we build funding programs on the African continent that is African funded? No? How do we create business incentives to contribute to education? There used to be a South African program called THRIP, where the business sector contributed for every euro that was raised, they contributed the same amount. In every NRF rand that you get, they would complement that with another rand or 3 rands. Let's make them pay. There's a skills levy. How do we use the skills levy at this point in South Africa? And that's only South Africa. So we need to find mechanisms to have our own funding pots on the African continent.
Thank you. You make a really good point. Actually a very important point. And you're very correct. That disparity in terms of the public or the power play, dependence on overseas funding, put many institutions in Africa at a disadvantage. And you make a really good point because we haven't even considered funding from industry, okay, which is substantial. So I do a forum, it's called Academia Industry Forum. So it's a very simple forum where you bring CEOs into a room and you get professors into the second room and you ask the CEO, so what don't you like about the professors in the other room? I've done it several times. And they'll tell you, well, we really need them, but they are too theoretical. They are too technical. And even though we need research, we're not even sure if they do research, it will be specific and oriented and intentional and all of that. Then you go to the profs in the other room. What don't you like about these CEOs in the other room? And they go, yeah, they have so much money, but they don't want to talk to us. See, but the point is, they have money, but you're not approaching them from the point of collaboration. You're only going to go and meet them because you want money. How many professors, for example, have gone to a company partner at the point of developing a proposal for funding? There is money in Africa. So yeah, make a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Extremely important. How do you activate other actors? Really think about the industry. Think about governments. There are ways, and there's way, and again, it goes back to what is the mutual interest and the mutual value here. And there has been some things written about this asymmetric dependency. Professor Patrizio Langa writes quite significantly about it. There's a book that will come out, I think it's a bit delayed, but that looks at mapping higher education policy, and this is one of the biggest findings, how higher education policy is driven by funding and what that means for institutions. So I'll let you know when the book is out. It's not out, we're delayed, but we're going to make it. But I think it's really important for us to continue this conversation. I don't see other hands. Please find me at lunch or tomorrow. And then, Professor, back to you. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much to our two speakers, and really appreciate it. And I appreciated the question about SAQA, because I always have a gripe against SAQA with their delays and all that. And so maybe after today, things will be better. But for you, Ms. Boshoff, I like your almost combative attitude representing Africa and all that. It's just that it's a bit expensive when one is looking for money. You know, I actually remember in one organization, I work for a religious organization in my other life, and so someone was asking, the lottery, they've got so much money, and we want the money now, and they want us to label it that we got it from the lotto all the time, and you are a religious organization that doesn't encourage gambling and all those sorts of things. So what do? And after 4 hours of discussions, others say, we don't take this money, we don't want it and all that. One good man stood up and said, well, I will take the devil's money and use it against the devil. I think there is wisdom there. But thank you so much for this reflection. It's been wonderful to have you, colleagues, since this morning. Now we can just go for our lunch, and you are going to actually find it. It's at the council chamber, I think. Outside here, our colleagues are going to direct us to where we are going to go. And then at 2 o'clock, which we need to be back, my DVC here for teaching and learning will be doing his coil. What do you call this? Yeah, it's quite complicated. Yeah, coil, yeah. But it's wonderful. We'll be dealing with that. It will be done actually here. At council chamber. We're going at council chamber soon after our lunch. We'll be going there for that. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you.
I want them to clear all the things out because they're not coming back yet.
Oh, I am reminded that we need to take our staff with us because we are not coming here. We are just going to the council chamber. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.